Story number 1. Whispers in the Rain. Sometimes, the quietest moments birth the loudest terrors. It was a late autumn evening when the rain started tapping on my window, gentle at first, like fingertips testing the glass. I remember sitting at my small desk, trying to finish a reading assignment for class, the smell of damp leaves drifting in through a cracked window. My name is Gina Mayfair, and I was 22, living alone in a little rental house at the edge of a woods in central Massachusetts. The place was old and creaky, but cheap, perfect for a student on a budget. I've never found storms frightening. If anything, the sound of rain used to comfort me. Then that night changed everything. I noticed the sound of the rain shift from the usual pattering to a soft, rhythmic pattern that seemed strangely articulate, like it was attempting a melody. I dismissed it as my imagination, perhaps the wind blowing the raindrops in an odd cadence. Outside, the sky was black, no moon visible, clouds heavy with a second wave of downpour. The overhead lamp in my room flickered, so I took out a candle for backup. The power lines in my neighborhood were notoriously delicate in storms. It was nearing midnight when the flicker of the lamp turned into a permanent outage. The entire house plunged into darkness, the only light the dim glow of my phone screen and the candle I'd just lit. The storm outside intensified, each gust rattling the siding. Thunder rolled in the distance. I stood at the window, pressing my face to the cold blast, trying to see if any neighbors still had electricity. Nothing but pitch blackness, the occasional glow from distant street lamps partially swallowed by the downpour. Then, in a flash of lightning, I spotted a figure across the street, someone in a hooded jacket, staring at my house. My heart kicked up. Another flicker of lightning, and the figure was gone. Just my nerves, maybe. My mind insisted I'd imagined it. Back at my desk, the candle's flame danced over my textbooks. The rain's patter on the window grew sharper, like 1,000 needles pricking the glass. I realized it wasn't just random tapping. It formed a repeated pattern, a sequence of drips that rose and fell in tempo. Leaning in, straining my ears, I realized it sounded eerily like a voice, or multiple voices. A hush of chills raced up my arms. The syllables repeated, intangible at first. Then I caught a faint shape of a word, my name. Gina. It made no sense, but I swore the rain was saying Gina. Gina, in a whispery hush. I recoiled, heart thudding. Could the wind be shaping the raindrops? Or was I half dreaming? The candle's shadow flickered on the wall, making me jump at my own silhouette. I told myself I was just tired. The storm had to be hitting the window at a freak angle, creating illusions of sound. Trying to banish the notion, I turned on my phone's flashlight and headed to the kitchen for some water, each step squeaking on the old wooden floors. As I passed the front door, I heard it, a gentle knock from outside. So faint, I almost missed it. Hello? I called, pressing my ear to the door. Nothing. Another knock, slightly louder. My heart pounded. Nobody I knew would come at midnight in a storm. The house felt colder, each draft making me shiver. Summoning courage, I cracked the door open. The porch lay empty, rain blowing sideways across the steps. No sign of a visitor. A wave of irrational panic gripped me. I slammed the door, locked it twice, retreated to the living room. Thunder boomed, rattling the windows. The whispering rain resumed, more insistent. I realized I was breathing shallowly, dreading each next drop. Another flicker of lightning cast shadows that looked like skeletal arms on the wall. My phone battery dipped below 20%. With the power out, I had no Wi-Fi, no router for a call. Cell signal was weak in this wooded area. I tried texting my friend Sarah about the weirdness, but the message hung unsent. The thunder boomed again, closer now. I sat on the couch, hugging my knees, candle resting on the coffee table. In the hush between thunderclaps, I heard something else, a trickling drip from the hallway leading to the back door, almost like a faucet left on. I got up, candle in one hand, phone flashlight in the other, and tiptoed down the narrow corridor. The sound grew louder. The back door had a small window with blinds drawn. Something wet seeped under the door frame. My stomach twisted. Rain couldn't get in that way unless it was forced. Another flash of lightning illuminated watery footprints on the floor, footprints leading from the door into the house, then fading near the hall closet. I froze, nearly dropping the candle. My brain reeled, someone's inside. But how? The closet door was slightly ajar. My breath locked in my throat. Summoning every shred of bravery, I approached. Hello? Who's there? No answer. Another clap of thunder rattled the windows. The footprints glistened with water, forming a small puddle at the closet entrance. I yanked the door open, candlelight revealing dusty coats, an umbrella, a box of old shoes. No one. Just a faint odor of stagnant water. The footprints ended at the closet's threshold, as if the intruder vanished. The candle flame flickered violently in a gust of air. I slammed the closet shut, fighting the urge to scream. Back in the living room, the whisper from the rain outside the front window seemed louder, an urgent hiss calling Gina. Gina, come out, my entire body tensed. Something wanted me to open that window or door. Thunder boomed again, followed by a flicker of lightning that revealed a shape pressed to the glass. I let out a yelp, the candle nearly tipping. The shape was watery, indefinite, a silhouette with a face dripping rivulets of black water. It mouthed something, eyes wide in torment. Then the lightning died, leaving only the reflection of my candle in the glass. The shape was gone. I retreated to the corner of the couch, mind spinning. My phone's flashlight beam wavered on the walls, revealing dancing shadows. The wretched whisper wouldn't stop. The air in the house felt denser, gloomier, as if the outside storm was creeping inside. Another knock at the front door. This one bolder, almost rattling the frame. My heart hammered. I crouched behind the couch, not wanting to answer, but the knocks kept coming in a slow, methodical rhythm. Then they moved to the living room window, a dull thump-thump-thump on the glass, each blow timed with the rumbles of thunder. I couldn't take it. I forced myself to the window, candle shaking in my hand. Who's there? I croaked. The knocking ceased. Pressing my face to the glass, I saw only darkness, until a bolt of lightning revealed a figure inches away, eyes locked with mine. It was a woman, hair plastered to her pale face, lips parted as if drowning. Her eyes glowed with an unholy reflection. I stumbled back, candle flame nearly guttering. Another flash, and she was gone. But the water pattern on the window shaped a handprint, slowly trickling downward. The radio on my phone suddenly crackled, picking up some random station. To my shock, a voice emerged from the static, faint but distinct. "Save me," it said, rattling with interference. Then the line fizzled. I stared at the phone's screen, no signal. Another voice replaced it, guttural, whispering, "Let us in." A wave of primal terror seized me. I tried powering off the phone, but it froze, locked with a swirling icon. The voice hissed again, "Let us in." I flung the phone onto the couch, my chest tight. Another wave of thunder and lightning. The entire house trembled as if battered by a gale. The rain hammered the roof in a cacophony. The whisper from outside intensified, forming not just my name but a swirl of half-heard pleas. "We're cold, alone, open the door." A dreadful recognition seeped in. The storm was not normal. Something used the rain as a conduit, a living entity harnessing the downpour to speak, to invade. The watery footprints, the silhouettes, they were the storm's victims, or minions, trying to claim me. My candle flickered dangerously low. In its trembling light, I spotted new watery footprints on the living room floor, crossing toward the hallway. They hadn't been there seconds ago. Something was inside. My pulse raced. I grabbed the heaviest object nearby, an iron fireplace poker. With that clutched in one hand, candle in the other, I followed the footprints. They led toward the bedroom door, half ajar, darkness beyond. The footprints ended abruptly at the threshold. I kicked the door wide, brandishing the poker. The bedroom was empty except for the bed, dresser, shadows dancing on the walls. I felt a hush, a pregnant silence. Then a drip from the ceiling. My gaze rose. A dark patch on the plaster, water dripping steadily. Another drip, a bigger one. The plaster bulged, sagging. Something black seeped out, not quite water, more viscous. The candlelight revealed shapes swirling within, like tiny faces screaming. Then the ceiling caved in a chunk, splashing a wave of frigid liquid onto the floor. I leapt back, shrieking. That liquid slithered, as if alive, coalescing at my feet. From its center, a face began to form, mouth wide in a silent scream. I bolted, the bedroom door slamming behind me on its own. The entire house groaned, as though under the storm's pressure. Another round of thunder rattled the windows, the walls. The whisper soared to a crescendo, "Join us, drown with us, let us in." My mind reeled. If I stayed, I'd be consumed by these watery phantoms. My only chance was escaping, braving the torrent outside. But how? If the storm itself was possessed, stepping out might be walking into its arms. Still, the alternative was being pinned inside with the liquid horrors. I raced to the front door, ignoring the pounding in my head, the monstrous shapes flitting in the corner of my vision. The door jammed, swollen by moisture. I slammed my shoulder against it, once, twice. Finally, it gave, letting in a blast of cold air and slanting rain. Immediately, I saw them, silhouettes in the yard, half substantial, drifting among the puddles. Each turned at once to stare at me with gleaming eyes. Lightning flared, revealing the yard now half submerged in swirling water. The downpour pummeled me, drenching my clothes in seconds. I had to reach my car, parked in the driveway about 20 yards away. I clenched the poker, started forward. The silhouettes moaned, gliding closer. My shoes splashed in ankle-deep water. Another lightning strike, and I saw that each figure was twisted, faces contorted by watery dread. Some wore clothing from different eras, as if this curse spanned centuries. They formed a ring, hands outstretched. I plowed through the water, shoulders hunched. The ring parted with a collective wail. A cold hand brushed my arm, nearly toppling me. A voice in my ear hissed, "You can't outrun the rain." Fear and adrenaline propelled me. I reached the car, fumbling for my keys. The door unlocked, I yanked it open, threw myself inside. The engine coughed once, then roared to life. Water hammered the windshield so fiercely I could barely see, but I slammed the wipers on high. Another silhouette pressed to the glass, face flattened, eyes rolling with sorrow. I stomped the gas, lurching forward. The watery figure slid away, dissolving. As I sped down the street, water up to the curbs, I realized the entire neighborhood was swallowed by the storm. Streetlights flickered or were out, my headlights revealing a swirling deluge, each yard turned into a small pond. The shapeless phantoms moved among the pools. My tires fought for traction. I somehow navigated to a main road, the ground slightly higher. The monstrous storm pressed behind me, swirling dark clouds overhead. The phantoms receded in my rear view, a chorus of moans lost in the wind. By dawn, the storm lifted, leaving devastation behind, flooded roads, downed power lines. The authorities claimed it was a freak event, a microburst or stalled front. They found my neighborhood battered, but no mass sightings of phantoms. Neighbors reported seeing shadows in the storm, hearing whispered voices. Officially, the damage was chalked up to extreme weather. But I know the truth, that living storm nearly claimed me. The rain had turned into a channel for ancient, drowned spirits or elemental beings, hungry to pull new victims into their watery domain. I never returned to that old rental house. Too many nightmares, hearing that tap 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 forming my name in the downpour. Even now, on rainy nights, I imagine I hear faint whispers on my roof, calling me. My new place is nowhere near a flood zone, but I still shudder each time heavy rain pounds my windows. Because once you've heard the rain speak your name, you realize some storms are not natural phenomena. Some storms are alive, inhabited by the restless dead who yearn for company in the endless watery darkness. If you ever sense the raindrops murmuring at your window, do not listen, because if you do, they may find you, and the quiet hiss of water might become a chorus of lost souls drawing you into their midnight tide forever. Story number 2. The rain that never ends. I was only looking for a place to ride out the storm, that's all. My map told me a small village lay just ahead, tucked between low hills, not even marked on most modern routes. I'd been driving across rural backroads for days, the weather turning from drizzle to deluge until the wipers could hardly keep up. Rain hammered my windshield so relentlessly I could barely see the road. It was well past sunset, the sky a solid black sheet. The downpour had started that morning and never let up, growing stronger each hour as though guided by an unnatural will. My phone lost signal miles back. With the gas gauge dipping low, I needed shelter. The village's name was half faded on the sign, "Welcome to Greywood Falls." The sign's wood was rotting, water dripping from the edges. My headlights revealed a single road curving into darkness, flanked by stunted trees. Not a single lamp glowed through the curtains of rain. I felt a twinge of unease, but at that point, I had no choice. If I tried to keep driving, I'd risk the tank running dry or, worse, skidding off the flooded pavement. The road led me through a shadowy canopy of dripping branches until I came upon a row of small, old wooden houses. The entire place was soaked, the eaves of each house dripping a ceaseless drip, forming murky puddles in the dirt street. The wind whipped sheets of water across my headlights, revealing nothing but silent facades, shutters closed, no signs of life. My wipers struggled, squeaking in protest. I slowed, searching for an inn or maybe a general store. No such luck. My gut twisted with a sense of emptiness, as though the town was deserted. But the houses didn't look abandoned. They seemed to have paused, as if everyone had stepped out and never returned. After a few blocks, I parked in front of what looked like a modest brick building with a wooden sign reading Town Hall. A single street lamp overhead flickered weakly, half drowned in the downpour. I opened my door, cursing under my breath as the cold rain drenched me instantly. Clutching my jacket, I hurried onto the porch of the town hall, hoping to find a telephone or at least a roof overhead. My footsteps splashed in deep puddles that had formed on the walkway, the water swirling around my ankles. The building's door was unlocked, oddly enough. Inside was pitch black. I flicked on my phone flashlight, revealing a small vestibule with a few chairs, a dusty desk. The air was musty, reeking of damp wood. "Hello?" I called, voice echoing in the darkness. Only silence and the steady hiss of rain on the roof. My beam caught sight of a board with pinned notices, each one water-stained. They dated back months, some even a year or more. One read, "Town meeting, urgent. Missing persons." Another, an older poster, read, "Rain is unending. We must find the cause." Goosebumps rose on my arms. The unstoppable rain battered the windows, as if the storm wanted in. A corridor led deeper into the building. I heard a faint drip from the ceiling. My instincts said to leave, but a desperate need for some clue or help drove me forward. The next room looked like a small auditorium, rows of seats facing a podium. My flashlight revealed them empty, except I spotted a single coat draped over one seat, still damp. As if someone left it there recently. But no occupant. My breath quickened. A creeping dread told me something was very wrong here. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the windows. In that strobe, I glimpsed a figure standing at the back of the auditorium, a silhouette with a dripping coat. My heart jolted. "Hello?" I whispered, shining my light. No one was there, only a puddle on the floor. The hush resumed, heavier than before. I stumbled back, deciding I needed to get out, find another building, or just wait in my car until morning. This place felt lifeless. Returning to the porch, the downpour hammered me again. My truck was a few yards away, half submerged in ankle-deep water. As I reached it, I noticed footprints along the muddy street, bare footprints, leading from a house across the road toward the next block, each print filling with water under the relentless rain. I shined my flashlight around, but saw no one. Another set of footprints branched off from them, heading in a different direction, also vanishing. Each one was the same, a single trail leading away from a door. A spasm of fear clawed my chest. Where did they go? A sign hammered to a lamppost read, 17 missing in last 3 nights. Stay indoors at night. The rain calls them out. My mouth went dry. The lamppost flickered, then fizzled out, plunging the street into darkness. My phone's flashlight revealed the endless sheets of water coursing down the deserted road, the windows of the houses staring like dead eyes. The rain took them, somehow. My mind raced, half screaming that none of this made sense. Refuge in my truck was the best immediate plan. I hurried back, started the engine. The headlights carved out the watery gloom. I resolved to leave this cursed place, ignoring my low fuel, maybe find a better labeled route. But as I tried turning around, my tires spun uselessly. The water was too deep in spots, or maybe the street was muddy. I cursed, shifting gears. The truck's wheels whined, no traction. The headlights illuminated something on the road ahead, a figure hunched over, water streaming from its hair. It lifted its head, gazing at me with vacant eyes. My blood froze. Then it stepped out of the beam, dissolving in the downpour. I had to find higher ground, maybe the edge of town. Shifting into low gear, I forced the truck forward, the engine groaning. We crept along. Each house I passed displayed the same sign of abrupt abandonment, doors ajar, no lights, watery footprints leading away. My heart pounded. The storm hammered on relentlessly, each drop like a cold bullet. A shape darted across the street, small, childlike, wearing soaked pajamas. I braked, honking. The shape vanished behind a fence. I flung open the door, yelling, "Kid, hey! You okay?" No response. Water battered my face. I waded across, checking behind the fence. Nothing but swirling puddles. I cursed. Another shape flitted at the corner of my vision, something tall and impossibly gaunt. The storm concealed it before I could see detail. I retreated to the truck, nearly in tears. The water was now above the wheel rims. I had to keep moving or risk the engine flooding. I pressed the gas, forging ahead. The road twisted, leading to a small square where a few shops stood. Lightning revealed a sign, "Grocer, boarded up." Another sign read "Bar," its windows shattered. At the center was a fountain overflowing, water swirling in black eddies. I saw numerous footprints leading to the fountain's edge, then disappearing. My horror mounted. Could the missing villagers be in the fountain? But the water there looked shallow. Another crack of lightning and I saw the fountain's center swirling unnaturally deep, a vortex. The rain battered me from all sides, each drop stinging like a needle. Suddenly, the engine sputtered and died. The dash lights blinked off, the truck now powerless. My heart hammered. I tried the key again, nothing. Outside, the shapes drifted in the gloom, moaning softly. A wave of hopelessness crashed over me. I locked the doors, but the watery apparitions approached, pressing their hands to the window glass, eyes hollow with watery tears. Their mouths formed silent screams. The rain rapped on the roof, forming what sounded like words, "Come out, come out." I felt the chill of despair, as though the sky itself demanded my surrender. In the flash of lightning, one figure parted from the group, a woman with streaming hair. She placed her palm on the window, water trickling down her arm. She mouthed my name, though I'd never met her. My reflection in the glass wavered, merging with her dripping face. Then the overhead thunder boomed, and she was gone. The door lock on my side clicked. I watched it pop up. I hammered it down, but it popped up again, as if possessed. The passenger side door handle jiggled. I yelped, cowering. Something was opening the truck from outside. In the next flash, the door swung open with a watery gust, revealing no one. Rain swirled in, drenching the seat. The shapes crowded around. My mind screamed to run, though run where? The water on the street was waist-deep in places. But staying meant letting them in. Summoning what remained of my sanity, I grabbed my phone, some small hope that the flashlight might help. I lunged out the driver's side, splashing into the water. The apparitions hissed, turning. The woman's shape reached for my arm. I jerked free, wading away, ignoring the torrential downpour. I stumbled down an alley behind the shops, water swirling around my ankles. The gloom pressed in. I heard them behind me, their moans intensifying. Another childlike figure approached from a side path, arms outstretched, face hidden by sopping hair. I shrieked, pushing past, the cold grip of watery hands brushing my shoulder. Lightning revealed a side door to a boarded shop. I pried at the plywood, forced it open enough to slip inside. The interior was dark, reeking of mildew. My phone's flashlight showed shelves toppled, watery footprints leading deeper, some half-dried, as if from days or weeks ago. The walls dripped. Each corner seemed to move in the flickering light. A staircase led upward. Maybe the second floor was drier. I climbed, water streaming from my clothes, hard hammering. At the top, a small window overlooked the flooded street. The shapes outside glided around my truck, now submerged up to the hood. They circled it like predators. My chest burned with panic. Lightning flared again, illuminating something behind me, a reflection in the window, the watery woman, standing in the same room, arms out, black hair covering half her face, a slow grin forming. I spun. Nothing there but shadows. A drip from the ceiling overhead, forming a puddle at my feet. The puddle rippled, shapes swirling in its surface. It almost looked like faces drifting just beneath, lips mouthing silent pleas. I bolted down the stairs, deciding to find a back exit. The water was up to my calves on the ground floor. The back door stood ajar, leading to an alley. The hush outside was worse than the storm, as if all sound was sucked away. The moaning of the shapes was absent. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd retreated. Then I saw them, silhouettes lining the rooftops, perched like watchers, water dripping from their forms. My panic soared. They wanted me to succumb. I sloshed through the alley, ignoring the monstrous shapes overhead. The alley opened onto a small footbridge crossing a creek. The creek had turned into a raging torrent under the unending rain. The footbridge groaned, half-rotten. But beyond it, I saw a faint glow, maybe higher ground or some safer area. I forced myself forward. The apparitions drifted behind me, trailing in the watery gloom, eyes fixed on me. At the bridge's midpoint, the board sagged alarmingly. Another flash of lightning showed the swirling black water below, foaming with debris. The woman's voice echoed behind me, "Stay, the rain never ends, join us." My entire body trembled. I took another step. The board snapped under my weight, plunging me waist-deep into the water. I clung to the railing, candle in the wind if I had one. The shapes glided closer, moaning in triumph. "We are the drowned, you belong with us." Another wave of water battered me, threatening to pull me under. Summoning every ounce of strength, I hauled myself onto the next plank, ignoring the stinging pain in my leg. The apparition's hands grasped at me, cold as ice, but they slipped away like illusions. A final surge of will, and I crawled off the bridge onto the far bank. The silhouettes hissed, as if the boundary prevented them from pursuing. The endless rain hammered me, but the shapes receded, shrieking in frustration. I saw a faint road in the distance, a slight rise. Maybe that was the route out. I stumbled that way, the watery illusions behind me fading with each step. Then, unbelievably, the dawn broke, a dull gray light seeping into the sky. The storm lessened as if some curse lost its hold. I collapsed on the roadside, half conscious. When I came to, the sun was high, brightening the soaked landscape. A local rancher found me, half limp, helped me to a small cabin. I tried explaining about the village, the illusions, the watery ghosts. He said that region had a ghost story about a cursed rain that swallowed an entire town decades ago, flooding that never ended, leaving only shadows. But the official record claims the area is just empty scrubland, no inhabited village. I recovered slowly, returning to the world of dryness and reason. The nightmares linger, though. Any heavy rain triggers flashbacks of watery footprints and the moaning silhouettes. It took me months to drive again. Even now, each time I see the sky darken, my pulse races, recalling the endless downpour that drowned an entire village in sorrow, leaving them to roam the streets at night, hungry for another soul to join them in the perpetual bloom. If ever you wander an unknown path in a relentless rain, watch for footprints leading away from empty houses and listen closely. If you hear your name in the patter of raindrops, turn around. Because once you enter that cursed realm, the rain never stops, and the lost souls will beckon you into the watery darkness from which no dawn can ever free you. Story number 3. The house at the bottom of the slope. I should have known better than to trust an old back road in the middle of a storm. My wife, Willow, and I were traveling through rural Pennsylvania, though it might have been closer to the border with West Virginia, heading home from a weekend getaway. The forecast mentioned a possibility of showers, but by late afternoon the sky churned with black clouds that threatened more than a drizzle. We should have looked for a motel earlier, but the roads twisted, our GPS lost signal, and the clouds opened up. The downpour that followed was like nothing I'd ever seen, drenching the world in curtains of water so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. It turned the narrow road into a waterlogged gutter, each mile a battle against hydroplaning tires and howling wind. Night fell far too soon, and we found ourselves half blind on a 2-lane asphalt strip that meandered through wooded hills. Every so often, lightning flared, revealing skeletal trees looming on either side. The wipers pumped furiously, but the glass still blurred with droplets. Our car's headlights carved out a narrow path through the storm, the rest of the world swallowed by swirling darkness. Willow kept checking her phone, no signal. We had to find shelter somewhere. As if on cue, a break in the trees showed a sign for a side road, Kespin Lane. The arrow pointed sharply downhill. Hoping for a house or farm at the bottom, we turned, the car's tires squelching as we eased onto the slope. We crept downward, the slope steep and pitted with potholes brimming with water. Lightning revealed glimpses of farmland turned swamp, ditches overflowing. The rain battered the roof so loudly it drowned out our breathing. I felt the tension in Willow's posture, her knuckles pale on the seat edge. "We'll be okay," I tried to reassure her, though doubt gnawed at me. Halfway down the slope, the headlights caught a shape, an old mailbox tilting by the roadside, the numbers too faded to read. Behind it, a driveway snaked away, half submerged in mud. I slowed, straining to see if there was a structure beyond. Another bolt of lightning illuminated a house, a battered 2-story silhouette perched at the foot of the slope, half concealed by a sagging fence. The place looked deserted, but at least it was shelter from the storm. I glanced at Willow, who nodded with hesitant relief. We had no better option. The driveway was a swamp, but the car pushed through, mud splattering the undercarriage. At last, we parked in front of the house, the headlights revealing peeling siding, broken shutters, an overgrown yard. My heart sank at the sight, clearly abandoned. But maybe it was open enough for us to shelter on a porch until morning. The swirl of rain hammered the car, threatening to trap us inside with no heat. Another lightning flash revealed a small covered porch. That might keep us drier at least. We braved the dash from the car to the porch, water lashing at us in horizontal sheets. By the time we reached the front door, we were soaked to the skin, teeth chattering. The porch creaked under our feet, boards warped by rot. Oddly, the door was shut but not locked. I tried the knob, and it turned with a protesting squeak. We exchanged a look of concern. Trespassing wasn't ideal, but we needed to get out of this deluge. So I pushed it open. A blast of cold, damp air met us, as though the house exhaled. Inside was pitch dark except for the flicker of lightning through grimy windows. The smell of mold and old wood filled my nostrils. Willow shone her phone flashlight around, revealing a foyer with peeling wallpaper, a short hallway leading deeper in. Each step we took squished on a floor that felt wet, as if someone poured buckets of water inside. My heart thumped. The storm was fierce, yes, but the windows and doors were shut. How was so much water inside? We found a living room to the left, vacant except for a broken armchair and some shelves. Drips fell from the ceiling in a steady patter, forming a puddle on the warped floorboards. Another flash of lightning illuminated a trickle of water running down the walls. It was as if the storm had seeped through every crack, saturating the house from top to bottom. Willow's face twisted with unease, mirroring my own. "We can't stay in a place that's basically flooding," she muttered. Still, it beat being outside, battered by the wind. We ventured further, using the flashlight to find a drier corner. The entire house glistened with moisture, dark streaks on the walls. An overhead drip near the staircase formed a small waterfall. I tilted my phone's light up the stairs, seeing nothing but darkness. Yet I felt watched, as though the house itself observed our trespass. Thunder rattled the broken windows, the flicker of lightning casting warped shadows along the corridor. We discovered a small parlor that seemed slightly less soaked, though the walls were slick with condensation. The floor was only damp, not flooded. We took refuge there, dropping our sopping jackets on a dusty table. My breath fogged in the air, which was unnaturally cold. We huddled, arms around each other, uncertain how to pass the night in this waterlogged ruin. "We can't stay long," Willow said, voice shaky. "But let's just wait for the storm to ease." Minutes passed in tense silence, the storm's roar outside unrelenting. Rain hammered the windows, lightning turning them a milky sheet of reflections. Then we noticed a faint sound from deeper in the house, a sloshing, as if footsteps in shallow water. We froze, exchanging panicked looks. Could there be someone else here? Another storm refugee? Or was it just water draining from the ceiling? A soft drip echoed from the hall, that odd slosh repeated. Summoning nerve, I took the flashlight, motioning for Willow to stay put. She insisted on coming along, though. So together, we crept into the hallway, following the watery sounds. At the hall's end was a kitchen with linoleum floors warped by time. Our flashlight revealed water dripping from every seam in the ceiling, trickling down walls, pooling on the floor. The place reeked of mildew. No footprints, no sign of a living occupant, just water. Then we heard a faint moan, so soft we might have imagined it. Willow's hand squeezed mine. Another moan, distinctly pained. It came from the next room, possibly a dining area. The door was slightly ajar, water seeping under. My heart hammered. We forced ourselves to open it. Inside was a dining room with a large wooden table, chairs overturned. Sheets of water ran down from a chandelier overhead. Each corner glistened with dark slime. In the corner near a cabinet, a silhouette knelt, shoulders heaving. Willow gasped softly, raising the phone's light. The figure was a woman, hair matted to her skull by water, dress clinging to her soaked frame. She faced away from us, head bowed. My mouth went dry. "Hello?" I croaked. She didn't turn. But a trickle of water slid from her shoulders to the floor. The moan resumed, a low sob. Something about her posture screamed despair. Lightning illuminated her for an instant, her arms were hugging her knees, water dripped from her hair like a steady faucet. Willow whispered, "Ma'am, are you okay?" No response. The moan continued. I stepped closer, shoes squelching. "We're not here to harm you. We just took shelter." Suddenly, the woman jerked her head up. Even from behind, we saw her neck move stiffly, unnaturally. Then in a flash of lightning, she turned halfway, letting us glimpse half her face, swollen, eyes wide with an expression of indescribable sorrow. A wave of cold washed over me, not from the water, but from a presence. She parted her lips as if to speak, but only a wet gurgle came out. Then, as lightning faded, the woman vanished into the darkness. No splash, no footsteps. Just gone. A strangled cry escaped Willow's lips. My own heart thundered in my ears. We fumbled back into the hallway, breath ragged, water dripping from the ceiling onto our heads. Panic soared. The entire house was drenched, inhabited by a ghostly figure. Another crash of thunder shook the walls, the overhead plaster cracking, letting more water gush in. The place felt alive with moisture, each droplet resonating with an unholy energy. We retreated toward the front door, resolved to brave the storm outside. But the door we'd come through was stuck, as if swollen by the water. I pulled hard on the knob, no budge. The windows near the front were similarly jammed, water seeping from every sill. Another moan echoed from the hallway behind us. I realized we were trapped. My lungs felt tight with dread. Frantic, we decided to find another exit. Maybe a back door. Sloshing through corridors, we found a half-collapsed laundry room. The door to the backyard was locked from the inside, but the knob refused to turn. We hammered on it. Nothing. The water on the floor rose nearly to our ankles. The entire house dripped in unending streams, as if the downpour outside lived within these walls. Then came a soft splash from behind. Spinning, we saw the watery woman again, her eyes gleaming in the phone's light. She floated an inch above the submerged floor, droplets continuing to stream from her body. She reached out a hand, beckoning. A stifled sob of fear caught in Willow's throat. The woman's lips parted, whispering words we couldn't hear. We stepped back. She advanced, water swirling around her feet. Another lightning flash from the window revealed her entire face, pale, bloated, lips bluish, as though drowned. A tear of water leaked from her eye. Then she flickered, vanishing. But the sound of water dripping remained, intensifying with every breath. In the flickering gloom, Willow and I scrambled upstairs, hoping for a vantage. The second-floor hallway was worse. Each room leading off was flooded up to the door threshold with a few inches of water, rivulets streaming from the ceilings. Photos on the walls were soaked, images blurred, as if the past was dissolving. My phone battery blinked near dead. No power in the house, no dryness anywhere. We found a bedroom that looked less inundated, though water seeped from cracks. Another moan drifted up the stairs. The entire house seemed to breathe sorrow. Lightning flared outside the bedroom window. Through the glass, we saw the slanting roof, also drenched. Possibly we could climb onto it, escape? We tried opening the window. It refused, warped by wetness. Then behind us, a voice, heartbreakingly sad, "Don't leave me." We whirled. The watery woman stood in the bedroom corner, eyes brimming with longing. Her lips trembled as water poured from her hair onto the floor. My heart lurched with pity and terror. I stammered, What do you want?" Her mouth opened, forming words in a husky whisper, "We all drowned." The rain never stopped. Then, in a swirl of water, she flickered out. It took a moment to register her meaning. Some tragedy must have befallen this house's occupants. Possibly a flash flood, or a time they got trapped in an endless storm. Now their spirits remain, playing out an eternal watery doom. The overhead thunder rumbled again, and we heard the woman's voice echo from the hallway, layered with others, like an entire family sobbing in despair. The water on the floor rose to shin level, swirling around furniture. The house was flooding from within, and we were next. Desperate, we tried the window again, using a broken chair as leverage to pry it open. With a tortured squeak, it shifted enough for us to slip out. Rain lashed us from outside, the roof slick. We crawled across shingles, thunder booming overhead. Another shape, or shapes, moved on the rooftop behind us, translucent forms of a man, woman, and child, each weeping silent tears of water. They drifted closer, arms outstretched, as if begging us to join them in their watery fate. Willow let out a cry. We scrambled to the edge of the roof, clinging to the gutter. A tree branch near the corner offered a precarious path down. Lightning flared, revealing the yard submerged, water swirling like a shallow lake. We inched along the branch, the ghosts moaning behind us, their shadows flickering with each lightning strike. I heard a watery child's voice say, "Stay with us." My teeth chattered from cold and terror, but we forced ourselves down the branch, dropping into waist-deep water. The yard's gate stood half submerged. We waded through, ignoring the ghostly shapes drifting in the corners of our vision. Another bolt of lightning, we saw the front drive. Our car was still there, water up to the doors. We had to chance it. We reached the car, forced the doors open. Rain hammered the roof, the interior sopping. The engine key turned. Amazingly, it coughed to life, as if the storm itself gave us one chance. The watery silhouettes emerged from behind the house, gliding across the yard. We reversed, water sloshing, tires spinning. Another ghostly wail soared, heartbreak and rage entwined. Then the wheels caught traction, and we lurched onto the muddy slope. In the rear view, the silhouettes formed a cluster in the yard, arms raised as though lamenting our escape. The house behind them shimmered in sheets of endless rain, the windows glowing with faint light. The woman stood in the doorway, face twisted by sorrow. Then darkness swallowed them all. We skidded up the slope, the water receding slightly. Another crack of thunder, and we found ourselves back on the main road. The storm eased just a fraction, enough to let us keep going. By dawn, the clouds parted, revealing a pale sky. We'd driven nonstop, adrenaline fueling us. Another hour brought us to a small town with a functioning gas station. We told no one about the house and the watery ghosts. Who would believe us? The official explanation would be a random storm, some spook talk. We quietly left it behind. In the aftermath, I researched the area. Some references to an old tragedy, a family trapped in a flash flood decades ago, the house at the bottom of a slope, water rising with unstoppable force. They drowned in the night, no rescue possible. Locals whispered it rained for days, as if the storm wouldn't relent until the family perished. The property was abandoned, rumored cursed. I realized we'd stumbled into that cursed place on the worst possible night. Now, each time I see the forecast for heavy rain, I recall the watery footprints in that hallway, the woman's tortured face, the sense of unstoppable doom. My mind replays the whisper, "We all drowned." The rain never stopped. I wonder if that house still stands at the bottom of the slope, waiting for the next unsuspecting travelers in a storm. The ghosts remain, locked in an endless cycle of flooding despair, wanting others to share their watery fate. If you're ever forced to find shelter on a stormy night and see a house at the bottom of a slope, abandoned but strangely inviting, think twice before stepping inside. Because once the door closes, you might hear the drip of water that never ends, and the anguished moans of souls who drowned in perpetual rain, and they won't let you leave dry. Story number 4. The Rain of Blood. We should have known the sky had other plans for us that day. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip, just me and 3 friends, hiking out to the edge of a remote forest in upstate Maine, or so we decided. Funny how we call a place a certain name, though in my mind it's always had a gloom about it. The official maps placed it near the border, but the locals had rumored it was old native ground, heavy with uneasy spirits. We laughed it off, craving a weekend escape from college stress. Looking back, I'd give anything to unmake that choice. My name is Zachary Cole, but after what happened out there, I'm not the same person who set foot in those woods. We arrived on a Friday afternoon in late fall, me, my longtime buddy Max, my girlfriend Serena, and our friend Jocelyn. The forecast said a mild cold front with possible showers, nothing big. The first day was idyllic, crunchy leaves underfoot, a crisp sky overhead, the golden hour painting the treetops as if set aflame. The campsite was a half-hour's walk from where we parked, sheltered under tall pines near a slow-running creek. I remember the hush of the forest, a deeper silence than I expected, as if the birds had gone quiet for winter's approach. We pitched our tents, built a small fire, roasted hot dogs, and joked. Max told some ghost stories. We teased him about being too dramatic. None of us realized how quickly a horror story would become our reality. Night came early. By 8 p.m., the temperature dipped. A biting wind rattled branches overhead, the embers of our fire dancing with each gust. Serena snuggled closer to me, eyes glittering in the firelight. Jocelyn retreated into her tent, complaining of a headache. Max tried to lighten the mood with a few corny jokes. Then, from the dark canopy, a single raindrop splashed onto the fire, sizzling. Another, then another. Within minutes, a steady drizzle forced us to abandon the campfire and take refuge in our tents. We zipped up, cursing the abrupt end to our evening. The rain escalated fast, like the sky broke open. A pounding deluge hammered the tent fabric. Lightning flickered, highlighting the outlines of pine branches overhead. The ground turned muddy, water seeping under the tent's edges. All we could do was huddle in our sleeping bags, praying it'd pass by morning. Around midnight, the thunder boomed close enough to rattle my bones, and the wind threatened to rip the tent stakes from the earth. I didn't sleep much, hearing the forest groan under the storm's wrath. By dawn, the storm had spent itself, leaving a heavy hush. The sun edged over the horizon, pale and weak. I crawled out of the tent, my boots sinking into soggy earth. Max emerged from his tent across the clearing, shaking water from his hair. We shared a groan about the dampness. Jocelyn poked her head out, complaining her sleeping bag got drenched. Serena followed me, stepping gingerly through puddles. But as we surveyed the campsite, we noticed something off. The puddles left by the storm water glinted with a ruddy tint, dark splotches that looked disturbingly like blood. Our boots left crimson footprints. We gawked at each other in shock. "Is this from the soil?" Serena asked, voice trembling. Max knelt, swiping a finger through the wet leaves. A smeared red streak marked his skin. "It's like rust," he said quietly, but the fear in his eyes told me he didn't buy that. We followed the red droplets around the campsite, seeing them spattered on our tents, dripping from pine needles, smeared across bark. Everywhere, the storm's aftermath glowed a faint, rusty hue. Jocelyn, pale as a sheet, said it smelled odd, metallic. We confirmed it, an iron tang in the air. I half laughed in denial, insisting maybe it was some environmental quirk or algae in the rain. But the hush in the forest felt deeper, menacing. The wind had died, leaving only our uneasy breaths. We decided to pack up quickly, not keen to remain in a place that apparently rained blood. The notion alone was insane. Rare phenomena are reported, but never this intense, and typically with rational explanations. Yet my gut told me this was no normal phenomenon. We stuffed wet gear into our packs, trying to ignore the sticky red residue that stained everything, including our hands. Each time we touched something, the fluid left a smear on our skin. The dread mounted. We needed to get out of there. But the next blow, the path we'd taken was half flooded, trees collapsed under the storm. We tried forging ahead, only to find the route blocked by uprooted pines. The ground turned into a watery bog tinted red. We spent hours searching for an alternate trail, but every direction we tried ended in thick brambles or swampy pits. By midday, the sun overhead did little to warm us. In the creeping gloom of the forest, the red staining never dried, staying slick. Our clothes clung to us, marred by this uncanny fluid. Each step squelched. Flies buzzed around the puddles, as if drawn by some pungent, bloody smell. Desperate, we decided to scout further. Splitting up was risky, but we needed progress. Max and I headed south, Serena and Jocelyn took a western route. We agreed to meet at camp in 2 hours. Max and I trudged through soaked undergrowth, the metallic tang in our noses. My heart pounded at every snap of a twig, hyper-aware of how unnatural the forest felt. Even the birds were absent, no calls from squirrels, nothing but the ominous hush. After an hour, we stumbled onto a clearing with a single large oak in the center, its trunk surrounded by a patch of brilliant red mud. In that mud was a ring of footprints, all barefoot, heading away from the oak. The footprints were large, small, varied, as though multiple people had circled that spot. My scalp prickled. Max whispered, "Dude, this is messed up." The trunk of the oak had a symbol carved into it, some swirling pattern we didn't recognize. My chest tightened. We retreated, deciding this wasn't the direction we wanted. Returning to camp, we found Serena alone, eyes wide. "Where's Jocelyn?" we asked. She stammered that halfway along their route, Jocelyn spotted something glinting in the underbrush, a metal ring, maybe, and she insisted on checking it out. Serena lost sight of her. She heard Jocelyn gasp, then nothing. Searching turned up no sign, only more red puddles. Fear seized us. We scoured the area, shouting her name. The forest devoured our voices. Night was approaching, the gloom under the canopy thickening. We decided we couldn't remain in the open. Max proposed we find higher ground. The map on my phone was useless, no signal, the battery draining. The only option was to keep moving, hoping to find a vantage or a logging road. We hiked with minimal gear, leaving the heavy stuff behind. Each step we left red footprints on the leaf-strewn ground. As twilight deepened, the forest turned sinister in the eerie half-light, the red slime shimmering on every surface. Then we spotted a narrow path leading downhill, deeper into the woods. The idea of going downhill went against normal logic. We'd prefer higher ground, but we swore we heard Jocelyn's voice calling faintly. We followed it, ignoring the spine-chilling sense that we were being drawn somewhere we shouldn't go. The path ended at a crumbling stone well, half buried in moss, water dripping from the circular rim. The muddy ground around it was soaked in the same red fluid. My heart pounded, recalling stories of old wells as portals to darkness. Lightning flickered across the sky again, thunder distant. Another storm threatened. A scream erupted from behind the well, a shrill cry cut short. We rushed around, finding only a twisted cluster of brambles, no sign of Jocelyn. But we did see a single shoe, stained red. My stomach lurched. The well seemed to exhale a damp chill. We peered over the edge, phone flashlights revealing water maybe 10 feet down. The water glowed faintly crimson, as if the substance from the rain was seeping upward through the stones. A hush of dread pressed on me. The well's interior walls were carved with symbols like those we'd seen on the oak tree. A wave of dizziness overcame me. Max gripped my shoulder, equally shaken. A new voice drifted from the darkness beyond the well, a low moan that resembled Jocelyn's. "Help me," it whispered, echoing among the trees. Willow and I turned, though the voice seemed to come from all directions. Another moan from the well, watery and guttural. In the phone's flickering light, the surface of the red water rippled as if something stirred below. My entire being screamed to run, but Jocelyn's fate hung in the balance. Max, in a surge of bravery, hopped onto the well's rim, shining his light deeper. The water churned. Bubbles rose, tinted red. He said he glimpsed movement. Serena huddled behind me, shaking. Another moan, "Help me, I'm down here." It was Jocelyn's voice, or an echo of it. Max reached for the old rope attached to a rotting bucket. He was about to descend when the water surface heaved. A swirl of red foam gushed up, splashing him, the stench of old blood. He leapt back, retching. The well's insides rumbled like a living beast. I yanked him away from the edge. We heard Jocelyn's voice again, but it twisted into an inhuman hiss. "Join us, the old spirit calls." The ground under our feet trembled. Thin rivulets of red water streamed from the well's base, creeping across the soil like living veins. Serena cried out. We scrambled away, watching in horror as the well's center rose a column of that crimson fluid, shaping almost a humanoid figure. Its face, if you could call it that, was a swirling mask of torment, multiple voices echoing from within. We were buried, cursed, thirsting for retribution. The wind roared, the trees thrashing. The shape lunged, arms made of swirling blood rain, grabbing at us. We fled, stumbling through the underbrush, ignoring the branches tearing at our clothes. Behind us, we glimpsed an entire wave of red water surging from the well, flowing through the forest, devouring the ground, turning the rain-sodden leaves into a wet, crimson mulch. The moaning of countless voices soared, as if the entire forest was alive with the dead. We sprinted blindly, fear fueling our flight. Another thunderclap overhead, and the sky unleashed another barrage of that red-tinted rain. Each droplet burned on contact, stinging our skin. The forest floor turned slick, but we kept running. At some point, the trees thinned. We emerged onto a muddy old logging road. Our battered car was at camp, miles away. But we pressed on, not daring to return for it. The wind howled, scattering leaves that dripped red. My vision blurred from exhaustion and raw terror, but eventually the logging road opened onto a paved route, some rural highway. We collapsed at the roadside, panting. Dawn's first gray light lit the horizon. The red rain abated, normal droplets returning. In the gloom, we realized Max was bleeding from small cuts, all tinted red. Serena's face streaked with tears, her expression hollow with shock. Jocelyn was gone. We had no illusions of going back for her. The malignant presence in that forest had claimed her. She was no longer among the living. A passing truck driver found us, wide-eyed at our condition. He called an ambulance. The local authorities came. They found no sign of the red-tinted rain. Our campsite was discovered drenched, gear abandoned, but no body. The forest floor looked normal, albeit waterlogged. The old well was described as caved in, impossible to investigate. The official story was that our friend got lost in a storm, presumably drowned or died of exposure. But the villagers in a nearby town whispered of a cursed well, said to be sealed decades ago after a family's horrific tragedy. They said the water was tainted by some old spirit, thirsting for living souls. Some claimed in heavy storms, the well's spirit manipulates the weather itself, turning it into a blood rain, capturing the unwary. We listened, numb with grief and guilt. Max and I parted ways soon after, each tormented by nightmares of swirling red water and Jocelyn's final scream. Serena and I tried to console each other, but the memory was too raw. I dream of that well sometimes, the stone slick with crimson liquid, an ancient entity beckoning from below. Each time it rains heavily, I check the color of the droplets on my windows, half afraid they'll run red again. I pray I never see that sign, campsite near that old forest. If you're out in the backwoods, storm clouds gathering, watch for any sign the rain might be tainted. And if you see a hidden well sealed under centuries of curses, do not unseal it. Because once the red rain starts falling, you might find yourself, like us, trapped in a storm that carries the anguish and vengeance of a long-buried spirit, and no matter how hard you run, it will follow you, dripping in sorrow and hungry for new souls to drown in its endless, bloody tears. Story number 5. The Man Who Knocks in the Rain. I think the first sign that something was wrong was how fiercely the wind banged against the windows that night, nearly drowning out the sound of knocking. I sat in my living room on a Saturday evening, crocheting lazily while a crime documentary played on the TV. Rain had been falling all day, but by nightfall, it had become the kind of storm you see on the news: torrential sheets of water, flashes of lightning dancing across the sky, and wind that rattled the old siding of my house. I live alone in a modest, single-story home at the edge of a small town, surrounded by a few scattered neighbors and an expanse of dark fields beyond. There's a certain comfort in that isolation, most nights. But on this particular night, as the storm escalated, that comfort turned to unease. I remember checking the clock, 10:48 p.m., when I heard it, a faint knock at the front door. At first I thought it was just a storm, maybe a loose shutter. But the knock came again, more deliberate. The hairs on my arms stood up. Who visits in weather like this? I turned off the TV's volume, straining to listen. Another knock, heavier. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I paused, uncertain if I should respond. The wind gusted, a thunderclap shaking the glass. Then a man's voice, muffled by the rain, "Hello? Please, can you help me?" I approached the door quietly, flicking on the exterior light. Peering through the peephole, I saw a man, face half hidden by the hood of a soaked jacket, water streaming off him. He stood hunched, as though exhausted, a battered duffel bag at his feet. My mind raced with caution. I don't normally open my door to strangers, especially at night, especially in a raging storm. But something about his posture suggested desperation. He tapped the door again, softly. "Ma'am," he called, voice shaking. "I'm stuck in the storm. My car broke down up the road. Please, let me wait inside until it lets up." Lightning flashed, revealing his pale face. I couldn't gauge his age, maybe mid-30s or older. Fear twisted my stomach. I took a breath, deciding to respond, but I kept the chain latch on. The door opened a crack, letting in a rush of cold, wet wind. My hair whipped around my face. "I'm sorry," I said, "I can't let you in. Maybe I can call a tow truck for you." He looked miserable, rain pummeling him. His eyes flicked up to meet mine in the gap. "No phone signal out here. Please, I just need somewhere dry." My instincts screamed not to let a stranger in, but guilt tugged at me. Still, I refused. "I'm sorry," I repeated. "It's too risky for me. I'll call a tow for you if I can." I tried to appear firm. He frowned, disappointment etched in his features. Another clap of thunder made me jump, nearly closing the door. "At least, could you let me wait on the porch?" he asked. Doubt gnawed at me. The porch was covered, though not fully enclosed. He could stay somewhat sheltered from the storm if he insisted. But something about the intensity of his stare set me on edge. "All right, the porch is fine," I said, voice shaking. "But I can't let you in." He dipped his head in a nod, water dripping from his hood. "Thank you," he murmured. I closed the door, quickly locking it. My heart hammered. Through the peephole, I watched him slump on a porch chair, hugging the duffel bag to his chest as if it contained something precious. Another bolt of lightning lit the yard, casting his shadow huge and distorted on the siding. I backed away, breath unsteady. I tried calling a local tow service, but my phone displayed 0 bars. Typical in a storm. The Wi-Fi flickered. The landline I keep for emergencies spat static, no dial tone. Great. I was cut off. The old lines must be down. The rain battered the roof in unrelenting fury. Thunder cracked overhead. I felt trapped. Yet my sense of self-preservation overshadowed pity. I resolved to wait out the storm in my locked house, maybe keep an eye on the man through the window. If I caught a signal, I'd call help. I returned to the living room, curtains half drawn. Flicking off the main lamp, I crept to the window, peering through a slit. The porch light glowed dimly, revealing the man hunched over, not moving. At least he wasn't trying to force his way in. Maybe everything was okay. Minutes passed. I busied myself rummaging for a flashlight, some candles in case the power cut out. Then, from the front hallway, I heard something bizarre, a faint dripping sound. Could be from the door area. I tiptoed over, shining my phone light. No sign of water. The man outside was still slumped in the same spot. Then I noticed a set of footprints, muddy footprints leading from the door down the hall. My blood froze. How could that be? The door was locked. I never let him inside. Yet these footprints were fresh, beads of water glistening in the phone's beam. My mind reeled. Slowly, I traced them. They headed deeper into the house, disappearing around a corner. My heart pounded so loud I feared it might burst. I forced a breath, stepping gingerly along the footprints, phone trembling in my grip. The footprints turned into my kitchen, each step a wet imprint. The overhead kitchen light flickered as if about to blow out. I swore I locked that door. Could he have found another entrance? The windows were shut. In the kitchen's gloom, the footprints ended abruptly near the back door, which was locked from inside. No footprints returned. As if whoever made them vanished. My pulse hammered. Something was terribly wrong. Lightning flashed in the window, illuminating my reflection. For a heartbeat, I saw a second shape behind me, a man's silhouette, eyes glinting with watery reflections. I spun around, phone light slicing the darkness, but saw nothing. I bit back a yelp, half convinced I was cracking under stress. I retreated to the living room, determined to check on the porch occupant. Maybe he'd snuck in, but how, if he was still outside? I parted the curtains, looked onto the porch. The man was indeed still there, exactly as before, arms around the duffel bag, not having moved an inch. My skin crawled. Another roll of thunder, the overhead light flicked. Then the power died entirely, plunging the house into blackness. My phone's dim glow was all I had. The wind howled, rattling the windows, rain pounding the roof like fists. In that suffocating dark, I heard it again, a drip, drip, drip in the hallway, accompanied by the faint squelch of wet footsteps. Something was moving deeper in the house. I called out, voice trembling, "Who's there?" The footsteps paused. Then a rasping exhale, almost a moan. I realized with a jolt that the man on the porch might not be the same presence inside. Could there be two entities? Or was the porch occupant a decoy while the real intruder roamed inside? My mind whirled with paranoia. The footsteps resumed, heading toward the bedrooms. Dread clenched my gut. I forced myself to follow, phone light bobbing on the water-streaked floor. Each step I took, the boards creaked in the hush. The hallway led to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The footprints glistened, an inch of muddy water trailing. The bathroom door was half open. I nudged it with my foot, shining the light. Empty, though the sink dripped. Another faint moan from the master bedroom. I pressed an ear to the bedroom door, hearing shallow breathing. My knuckles whitened around the foam. Slowly, I eased the door open a crack. The beam revealed my bed, the covers soaked, water dripping from the ceiling fan. And standing at the corner was a figure, half turned away, clothes sopping, water pooling at his feet. The same shape as the man outside, but different. He had no face. Or rather, the face was a blur, as if waterlogged. Terror jolted me. My voice stuck in my throat. The figure turned slightly, as though sensing me. Then it flickered out, like a reflection on a disturbed pond. Just gone. I stifled a scream. My phone's light wavered over the drenched bed, finding only watery footprints near the door. The figure's presence felt oppressive, as if the air carried a swirl of sorrow. I stumbled back into the hallway, adrenaline spiking. My mind hammered with an impossible scenario. A second, watery version of that man had entered my house somehow, or manifested from the rain. The real man, or maybe another lure, remained on the porch. The weeping storm hammered outside, unrelenting. A sudden pounding on the front door made me jump. The man's voice, more urgent, "Please. Let me in, I'm freezing." The door rattled. The watery footprints in the hallway glistened anew. My phone buzzed with a dying battery, 5% left. No call for help. A wave of hopelessness crashed in me. Pressing to the living room again, I parted the curtains a hair. He stared right at me, as though sensing my presence. The porch light flickered, revealing his expression was no longer desperate. There was a blank, chilling calm in his eyes. He mouthed something, "Let me in," though I heard no sound. Another flash of lightning, and for an instant, his face seemed battered, water dripping from an impossible wound. Then darkness. I shrank back, releasing the curtain. A new set of footprints led from the hallway into the living room, each drip echoing. The watery figure was close. Panic spurred me to attempt the back door. Maybe I could slip out, run for help. But turning that knob, I realized the handle was ice cold, jammed. The short corridor behind me filled with faint splashes. The watery figure's presence pressed in. In a final act of desperation, I moved a heavy cabinet in front of the living room door, blocking the entrance from the hallway. If the watery intruder was beyond it, maybe I could hold it off. I then braced the front door with a chair. The man outside remained, knocking gently, each rap in sync with the thunder. The house felt alive with wetness, walls dripping. Time lost meaning as I cowered in the corner of my living room, phone clutched, battery fading. The candle on the coffee table had gone out. Only the occasional lightning gave me glimpses of watery footprints encroaching. Another moan, faint, from behind the blocked door. Then, abruptly, the knocks on the front door ceased. Silence. Not even wind. I crept to the window, heart in my throat, parted the curtain. The porch was empty, the man gone. Relief warred with dread. Had he left, or is this a new trick? The hush remained for a minute, 2 minutes. Then came a small knock, right behind me on the window glass. I whirled, but nothing. Another knock from across the room, as if each window in turn. The watery figure was toying with me, or perhaps multiple figures. I realized with dawning horror that the entire storm was orchestrating this haunting, each raindrop carrying a piece of the intruder's presence. Suddenly, the overhead lamp flickered on, bathing the living room in a weak glow. My heart soared with false hope. But the image that greeted me was a watery man standing in the center of the room, clothes drenched, hair dripping, eyes dull. He'd bypassed the barricade somehow. I choked out a scream, stumbling backward. He raised a hand, water streaming off his fingertips. When he spoke, the voice was the same as the porch man, "Why won't you let me in?" The words echoed unnaturally. My mind reeled. "You're already inside," I rasped. His mouth stretched into something that might have been a smile, water pouring from the corners. "We need a place, it's so wet out here. Let us stay, in you." I tried to run, but the floor was slick with water, my feet slipping. The figure advanced, each step accompanied by watery squelches. I huddled behind the couch, brandishing my phone. He moved faster than expected, looming over me. Lightning outside flared, revealing his face close, hollow eyes boring into mine. "We'll drown you," he whispered, water pattering on the floor from his sleeves. In a surge of panic, I hurled the phone at him. It passed through his body like a rock sinking in a pond, leaving ripples in his form. He hissed, rearing back. I scrambled up, heart pounding, scanning for an escape. The front door was blocked by the man's original self? Or no, it might be free. Summoning every shred of bravery, I charged the door, yanked the chair away, unlocked it. The watery figure shrieked behind me, a sound like a gust of wind through a cavern. I flung the door open, the storm rushing in with ferocious wind. Outside, the yard lay half-flooded. The man from the porch was gone, replaced by swirling rain. Another watery silhouette approached from the side, arms out. I leapt off the porch, boots splashing. My single thought, get to the car. But I'd see if it started after being hammered by the storm. Each step in the yard felt like trudging through a muddy battlefield. The watery illusions circled me, moaning. The car was half submerged. My heart hammered as I yanked the door. The interior was soaked, but the engine coughed to life. Another watery shape closed in, pressing a dripping face to my window, eyes empty. I fought panic, slammed the gas, and tore out onto the sloppy driveway, fishtailing onto the rural lane. The road was black with water, but I forced the car forward. In the rear view, I glimpsed silhouettes drifting from the house, arms raised as if cursing me. Rain still pounded the windshield, but less violently now. My headlights carved out fleeting images of watery figures along the roadside, each turning to watch me pass. I drove for miles, ignoring all illusions, until eventually the storm eased. By dawn, I reached the main highway, shaking all over, mind scattered. I told no one but my closest friend about that cursed night. The official story is a freak storm, me nearly flooding. But in my nightmares, I see watery footprints creeping across my floor, the handle jiggling in the dark, a man outside saying, "Let me in." I worry that next time it rains heavily, he might find me again, carrying the entire storm inside him, determined to drown me in his watery domain. Because once you face the man who knocks in the rain, you realize the boundary between inside and outside is nothing. The water seeps through every crack, and the drowned spirits want a warm, dry place to haunt. If you ever hear that gentle tapping on your door in a midnight downpour, maybe check the footprints first, because if they're inside before you answer, you might not survive the next wave of watery intrusion.